The Insurance Pro Blog Podcast, episode number 405, Dynamic Retirement Income Planning with Indexed Universal Life Insurance. There is no asset more versatile or more protected from volatility than life insurance. Add it to your retirement plan to shield against the unknown. We've been doing this for decades. Let us help you add a layer of security to your portfolio today. Check out more at theinsuranceproblog.com. That's theinsuranceproblog.com. Hello and welcome. This is the Insurance Pro Blog Podcast. It is Monday, January 6th, 2025. This is episode 405. I am Brandon Roberts.
And I am Brantley Whitley.
And you are listening to the internet's favorite podcast about life insurance.
Almost 13 years in running.
Almost. We're going to make it. We're going to make it.
We're in our 13th year. How about that?
We are. We are indeed. And as you can see, new year, same us. Still using heady sounding titles. We are men who wear glasses and earth tone clothes.
And we have less and less hair every year.
Talk about things like dynamic retirement income planning.
Ooh, boy, that sounds exciting. It actually is.
Like the audience.
Wait till we start reading the numbers from our spreadsheets off.
Hey, it's been a while, so we had to get back to that.
Well, it's 2025, so we figured we'd start the new year off with a dull bang. More of a thud.
Dull clink.
We should have a supporting article to go along with this to display.
That would make
this,
sense, right? Since there's going to be a lot of numbers. That would make a lot of sense. So
yeah, so
check theinsuranceproblog.com.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the podcast description as well. That's at some point.
Always a good idea. But,
yep.
Theinsuranceproblog.com is a great place. Great place to go. And if you forget the in there, because, this was done years ago and we didn't think about that, I think insuranceproblog.com will get you the same place.
Oh, you think so?
Maybe not. Google it. It'll get you there.
I don't know. I should know this, but I don't. All right. So dynamic retirement income planning.
Right. So in the context of retirement income planning, there are a lot of advisors who tend to talk about the subject as if retirement income will be the static number.
Right.
Kind of the age-old fixed income thing.
Right.
So you'll start retirement, you'll have X amount of dollars in income, and that's basically it for the rest of your life. Good luck.
Right.
That's go ahead.
I was going to say, when people just had pensions and Social Security, that a lot of times was the way it actually worked. But
yeah. But that's not generally how people do things.
Yeah.
Their income needs fluctuate. Mm-hmm. And when they have discretion over the amount of money they're going to withdraw from their accounts, they're going to withdraw the amount of money they need.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for a while. You have too.
Yep.
I have yet to meet somebody in retirement who says, hey, I need $5,000 of income this month, but just for kicks, why don't you send me $7,500?
No, because most people prudently are concerned that they might run out of money before they die.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand the simple math of, well, if I don't spend more, then it's going to last longer.
That is correct. Additionally, people often discover that as time goes on, a number of them are fortunate enough to see their assets, their retirement assets, perform better than we might have expected.
Yep.
And when that happens, we get a really cool opportunity to increase potential income.
Yep.
Now, again, just because it's potential income doesn't mean people will actually take it. There are times when people go, okay, I started out at $5,000. I have the capacity to do $6,500 very comfortably, but I don't need $6,500, so I'm not going to do that. There are other times that people might say, hey, you know what? The cost of things has gone up.
Yep.
Have you seen the price of eggs lately? And so I'm going to need some additional money. And again, when your assets do better than we thought, you have the capacity to afford that increase in price. We generally refer to this as dynamic retirement income planning.
It just means it can change.
Correct. Dynamic is just a word for things change. So this is a very good thing, but it's something that we have to take into account if we are helping somebody build a retirement plan or just build an asset around their overall retirement plan.
Right.
The fact that, hey, we might want to start the income number at some level that is not reaching for the stars, because if we are obnoxiously too high, it might put you in a position of further risk when you need to take even more out because the prices of things go up.
Yeah. And in general, the human condition is such that no one ever gets mad if you 5 years down the road, say into their retirement, say, you could take more money.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody gets mad if you say 5 years into their retirement, you need to take less money.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, in our country, at least, inflation is the way.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of deflation going on.
Not generally.
Not in my lifetime.
There are certain things that tend to be more discretionary that go down in cost over time.
Sure.
But a lot of the staples kind of stay the same or inch up a bit.
Yeah. Gas, groceries.
Yep.
Utilities.
Right.
The sort of pillars that everyone has in their life. Those things tend to go up. So
property taxes, that's a
sore
deep
subject.
and fresh wound for both of us.
I think for every person I've talked to in different parts of the country, it's a fresh wound.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common thread. So having the ability to bump that income up later is a nice option to have.
Yep, it is. Now, we have said from the very beginning that life insurance is a fantastic retirement income tool.
Yes.
It is the thing. Above all the other things anybody has ever tried to say are good things you can do with life insurance, that we believe is correct.
Yeah.
So for us,
it's not as popular because it's not about financing your Hawaiian vacations or
it's kind of boring too.
Buying the car you want or anything like that. It requires lots of delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And there went all the people that were listening. They're like,
just a dull sort of burn for decades, which is totally on brand for us. So it is such a fantastic tool for income planning.
Why is that? I mean, I know we're going to get into it, but
it has to do with a combination of things, really. But ultimately, if I could identify or summarize kind of broadly and quickly, the lack of volatility and the tax efficiency that it brings to the table are unparalleled by any other asset I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And I own plenty of other assets.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them unfold, and I'm happy with most of them. I still, though, go back to life insurance and I see what it does. Yep. And it still absolutely has a place in my life and absolutely can have a place in other people's lives.
Right. I would say the third leg of that three-legged stool, since we're talking about insurance, we got to use three-legged stool analogies, right? Is flexibility.
Yeah.
And I mean it, there's a lot of ways you could spend flexibility with a cash value life insurance policy. But I mean particularly your ability to essentially, not in every case, there are some limitations, but essentially fund it to whatever level you want to.
Yep.
Now, obviously, if you make $30,000 a year, you're not going to be able to buy a policy where you pay $200,000 a year in premium.
No.
There are going to be some questions about where's that money coming from. So that's why I'm hedging myself there. But essentially, in most cases that we've worked, it's, how much do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And that makes it unique. There's just
It does.
not other assets that you can fund in an unlimited amount that also give you the same risk profile and the tax efficiency.
Yep. So in this discussion about dynamic retirement income and talking about life insurance, today we want to spend a specific time on index universal life insurance.
Oh boy.
Because
there went all the other people that were listening.
Because index universal life insurance has a greater capacity to outperform our expectations.
Yes.
At least that's the empirical evidence.
Yep.
At this point.
Mm-hmm.
Whole life insurance is great. You can kind of set your watch by it.
Yep.
Index universal life insurance, on the other hand, has a greater range of what's going to potentially happen. It has, however, been our experience that, with the asterisk that you've got to set the expectations appropriate from the outset, the chances that we hit the upper end of the range in terms of possibilities is much more likely than the lower end of the range.
Right.
There can be good and bad years, and in our experience, the good years have a tendency to overwhelm the bad years.
Absolutely.
So looking at it in the context of
the only thing I would add is time. You have to give it time.
Elaborate a bit on that.
You can't make a judgment call on an IUL policy 4 years into the contract.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
We've had a few people that, became very critical very early.
They get a little nervous when they have like a 0 year right in the beginning.
Right.
And
I understand that. I mean, it's emotional to see that, well, I paid all these expenses, but nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Or I got some nominal amount of interest.
Right.
But we're talking about and I think we're going to get into some specific examples, but we're talking about over a 20 plus year period.
Yep.
So
we are talking about a 30-year period in our example. And that 30-year period is the income section. We're also taking into account the 20, 25 years before that.
Right. While you were funding it.
Correct. So we've looked at some index universal life insurance modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to suss out with this is, how does it accommodate various scenarios where we are intentionally changing the income amount to reflect the realities of this dynamic retirement income planning that we're talking about. So
right.
We're not just looking at a static income level year in and year out. We want to see how well this product can sustain income over a 30-year period where our income needs are changing, because we want to do different things with our income capacity, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So
throughout our retired years.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And I want to point out too, because we're going to call it income distributions. These are coming as policy loans.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I just wanted to be explicit. So
good point to make, actually, because what we should point out, one of the things that puts life insurance high in terms of its capacity to generate income is the balance between cash value and loan balance.
Right.
So unlike an investment account where you withdraw money,
mm-hmm.
and the money that you've withdrawn is now forfeited in terms of any gain you would have received from it.
Right.
Which is it's a hand-wringing consideration for a lot of people, by the way, in retirement, to say, well, I've only got so many shares.
Right.
Every time I sell shares, that's fewer shares that I own.
Right.
So what happens if I run out of shares?
You run out of money.
That's basically it. The difference with life insurance is the cash that you had from day one of retirement, that never goes away.
Right.
That just sits in the policy and continues to grow.
Mm-hmm.
What you're really doing is you're growing a loan balance against that cash. And the trick is that we got to keep them in check against one another.
Right.
And what we find is that doing that actually gives us, in most cases, more dollars of spendable retirement income per dollar saved, and generally per dollar accumulated, than is the case with traditional investment accounts.
Right.
That's not to say that you should just do all of this and none of the investment accounts.
No.
That's just to say that there is a strength life insurance brings to the table that is often overlooked and undervalued by people who just don't understand how this works.
Right.
So, particulars for those who are looking for that. We're looking at an indexed universal life insurance policy that has accumulated $1 million of cash value by the time income starts for somebody who's 65 years old.
Okay. So they've been funding this for 25-ish years.
Yeah, we could say that they've been putting money in for 20, 25 years. How they got to $1 million is not as important in this
I just want to give
example.
context. Yeah.
Yep. And the other thing that we are using as far as the mechanics of the policy, we're looking at an S&P 500 indexed account with a 0 floor and an 11% cap rate.
Okay.
Which is by no means the best indexed universal life insurance product we're aware of.
Right.
But we're trying to do something that's representative of putting your best foot forward with this product.
Yeah.
And taking into account that not everybody's going to buy the absolute best thing that's out there.
Right. We're not making the highest assumptions about everything. We're not painting the rosiest picture.
Right.
On purpose.
Right. We're also assuming 0 bonuses.
Right.
And when it comes to the expense of the contract, we're using about double what we have observed to be generally the top tier product designs that we would generally use. So our expense assumptions are a little heavy-handed, but we did that to see if it works here, then it's going to work with what we would normally set something.
And we're not talking about, I just want to clarify, we're not talking about year one expenses. We're talking about year 26, 27.
25, 30, yes.
Expenses.
Which, for those who are interested, is an extremely small percentage of cash value in the policy.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a number of times in the past. We set these policies up with an intention for expenses to comprise 1/10 to 0.2% of cash value once income starts.
Yeah.
And they stay pretty much in that range for the entirety of the rest of the policy's life.
Yeah.
So this idea that there's just, it's life insurance, it's expensive, it's going to rise over time. If you do it right, the answer is no.
Right.
So it's also,
and we've talked about the mechanics of why
doing.
that happens in the past. You can,
yep.
If I had a specific episode to refer you back to,
I would, but I don't. So just go look.
It's there.
So we're going to start $1 million of cash value. We're going to take $45,000 per year as the initial income amount.
Okay.
And we're going to index it for inflation.
Where'd you come up with 45,000?
It's around the 4% rule. It's a little bit higher than that, actually.
Yeah.
So that's where we're starting.
Okay.
For years, we've said you could probably withdraw about 6% starting out. Keep it at that number forever and you'll be fine.
Yep.
But staying in the context of more traditional retirement planning, let's do 4.5. So 45,000. We're going to index it for inflation. Our very sort of zoomed out, quick and dirty way of doing that is to just increase the income number that's coming out of the policy by 3% every single year.
Okay.
We're going to do it for 30 years. So we start year one, that's age 65. $45,000 is the income amount that's taken from the policy.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we're 95, 30 years later, the income that we would take from the policy is $106,045 in income. So
that's the straight line of 3% a year.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. When we increase it by 3%, we get a much larger amount of money that we would be generating from the policy by the time we get to the 30th year.
Yep.
At that point, the policy is in no risk of falling apart, as some people would like to suggest.
Mm-hmm.
It's got almost $6 million of cash value. It's got a loan balance of almost $5.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, almost $5.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the loan balance has grown. The cash value has also grown because remember, as we already established, the cash never leaves the policy.
Right.
So what we're really concerned about is how the loan balance grows in relationship to the cash value.
Right. Right. And so in this example, say you died at the end of your 95th year, 95th year? Yeah. The 95th year you were on the planet. I say that in the most awkward way possible.
Your 95th year, not the policies.
Not the policies. That means that I don't know what the aggregate amount of income you've derived from this thing. Some very large number. But you would still have a death benefit of $700,000 roughly.
A little more than that because death benefit's always going to be slightly higher than cash. Net cash value is $710,973. So that plus something is going to be your death benefit.
Between 700 and 800,000 probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've withdrawn millions of dollars as income.
Yep.
And you still get $800,000 of death benefit. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And there were no more. I also want to clarify this. At the time we started income at age 65, there were no more premiums being paid into the policy at that point.
Oh no. That's long gone.
Yeah.
So all of the money that would have been put in has been taken back out.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's worked.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using historical S&P 500 values to get here.
Right.
So
to give a, I hate to call it a randomized distribution, but that's basically what it ends up being because we're just overlaying the cap rate on what the index did.
Yep. Correct. And there were good years and bad years. There were actually, I'll tell you right now, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years where no interest was earned at all.
Yep.
So happens. And in those years, the cash value did go down a little bit because of the expenses assessed against the policy. So we're talking a little less than a third of the time.
Yep.
You got nothing. And still, we're able to take our income from $45,000 at inception to $106,000 30 years later. And we could still do that. $106,000 for several years after that. Possibly several more if we were to cap out again at the 11%, because at almost $6 million in cash value, you get 11% paid on that. It's going to increase your cash balance.
Yeah. And or you could stop inflating the withdrawal amount.
Correct.
Which would help a little bit.
One might argue that at 95 years old, $106,000, you may not need it. You just may not. Now, most people don't do this. They don't intentionally increase their income by some fixed number every single year.
It's just a mathematical exercise.
Correct. What they more commonly do is they start taking money from an account, and then some years later, they may have a conversation with their advisor that says, you do realize that because things have worked out better than we thought they were going to, if you would like to increase the amount you're taking, you can do that.
Yep.
And they go, hey, you know what? I got some additional things that are going on. Why don't we do that? So instead of a 3% static per year, what if we were to delay it for 5 years and then just increase the income number by 10%?
Mm-hmm.
So if we do that, we start out at $45,000. We end the last 5 years taking $72,473 as income from the policy.
Right.
It should come as zero surprise to anybody that scenario works just fine, and in fact puts us in a better position 30 years later because we've just taken less money out of this policy. At that point, the gap between our cash value and our loan balance is $1.5 million.
Right.
So our death benefit is something north of $1.5 million.
So if you live to be 120, the likelihood is you could keep doing this and
for a long, long time.
Right.
And be just fine. But to stress that even further, what if we were to do that, but for the last 5 years, let's take the income up to $200,000, specifically with something in mind.
Okay, so we're going to inflate the income by 10% every 5 years, but the last 5 years we're just
going to take a huge jump.
Right.
Up to $200,000. And the idea in terms of what we're trying to model here is, let's say the last 5 years of your life, you need to go into a nursing home.
Yep.
Expenses are going to rise dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
If we do that, everything's just fine.
Yeah.
Everything's just fine. In fact, we end up with a difference between cash and loan balance that's very similar. It's actually a little bit better than that scenario where we inflated the income every year by 3%.
Yep.
So think about that. We can increase the income periodically, and then we can jump to $200,000 per year for 5 years. And everything's fine.
Pretty amazing.
I would dare argue that over this period of time, this 25-year period, the income that's been generated averages out to something that's pretty much in line with that 6% number that I threw out earlier, being the kind of static number that you could do pretty much forever and be fine.
Right.
But yet, last 5 years, we kick it up to $200,000.
Right.
There's two things going on, by the way, with the dynamic retirement planning model. One, your assets are performing better potentially than you thought. But two, the timeline is compressing between living and dying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the one thing that we know for certain is that the number of years you have left at 65 is more than the number of years you have left at 75.
Right.
It's just mathematical fact.
Yep.
Which does give us some additional leeway to increase the income.
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, we wanted to look at a scenario where we kind of model the traditional retirement smile.
Smile.
So higher expenses in the beginning for the go-go years. Then things kind of come down.
I thought you were doing ads for a dentist. I'm like,
well, I mean, either way. Then income needs come down because you kind of get a little older. You kind of settle into things. You don't need as much.
Right.
But then as you get towards the end of life, income expenses increase quite rapidly for
healthcare
reasons, long-term care, things like that.
Yep.
So we start actually at a highly inadvisable $80,000 per year being withdrawn from the policy for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then we drop it down to $60,000 for 5 years.
Those are go-go years. Got to take some trips and stuff.
We got to go. Then we come down to $60,000. Then we come down to $40,000. And we stay there for a while. But then last 5 years, we kick it up to the $200,000 per year.
Yep.
Again, we're fine. This scenario works out without any incident.
Yep.
Balance between cash and loan is a little bit thinner than in the other scenarios, but still not at risk of bankrupting the policy.
Right.
So
that's just due to the fact that you took so much more early on and your loan balance grew a little faster. And
again, if you were to come to me with an IUL and $100 million of cash value, I would never want more than $60,000 being the amount coming out. Unless you're going to tell me, look, I'll take 80 this year, but I'm going to take 0 for the next couple of years. Then, okay, fine. But would much rather hang it at most a 6% number of cash value.
Yeah.
And I know to the agents and other people who have seen these things modeled, there are illustrations out there where the projected income models are like 10% of cash value.
Oof.
I am aware. But just because it says it can do that doesn't mean you should do that.
That's all right. You can put any numbers you want in there, but it doesn't make it true.
And as practitioners, we should be practicing care for these situations to say, listen, anybody can put whatever numbers they want on paper and assume certain things that are going to make projections. We have to have the intelligence to look at these things and go, are these wise assumptions?
Right.
And if they're not, then we don't build expectations on that.
Yeah.
So yes, we can start with a higher number, we can bring it down, and then we can bring it up immensely. And it's all fine. And these are the things that are much more likely to unfold in somebody's retirement life.
Yep.
Versus hey, you start out at 65, you take $60,000 out, you just do that forever.
Right.
Not generally how people are going to address this.
No.
The point is that indexed universal life insurance has the variability in terms of what will likely be the rate of return on the policy.
Mm-hmm.
To one, outpace expectations if we start from a sort of let's ratchet back what we think is going to happen standpoint.
Yep.
And use somewhat lower numbers to give ourselves the capacity to increase this thing.
Yep.
And because of that variability, there's a very, very high likelihood, in conjunction with the fact that you're just getting older and you're going to live for fewer years, that, income can increase. can definitely increase, and it can increase by a lot. And that gives you the wherewithal to afford several things that retirees are likely to face as they get into advanced age.
Yep. Absolutely. And I just want to point out one more time that there are several keys to this, as you pointed out, as to why this works so well. But the two main ones are the fact that once you get into this distribution phase where you're taking these policy loans to generate income, is tax efficiency.
Yep.
And lack of volatility.
Yep.
The fact that you don't have a situation where you have a 25% drawdown in your account value in a year. That is what allows this to work.
Yes. Yes, it is.
I'm not going to say that it's going to work out exactly as we have modeled it here, because that's not going to happen. But this is a good look at what would have happened given a distribution of returns over time. But also notice the one thing we didn't say in this that was a key: rate of return.
Yeah. We're not worried about that. Well, we are moderately keeping an eye on what we think a rate of return is going to be across life insurance products.
Right.
But we're not obsessing about what rate of return is by some randomized number that somebody on the internet or in a magazine or on the radio told us needed to be our rate of return. Otherwise, we're a chump.
Right.
We're worried about accomplishing the real goal, which is income.
Net spendable cash.
Yep. Because that's all that matters.
Yep.
You can go to the grocery store and say, look, I got a 12% rate of return on my mutual funds. The grocery store clerk's going to look at you and say, that's nice, dear.
67.32. That's your total. Yep, exactly. Okay.
That's what matters. All right. Well then, with all that said, I am Brandon Roberts.
And I am Brantley Whitley.
And we will see you again next week.